Hello, welcome to my first ever recorded lesson. This one is on watercolor blending. So what I'm doing right now is I'm making some washes. For my setup, you see I have water, paper towel, watercolor, palette, paper. What I'm doing is I'm going to get one color wet at a time and make what is called a wash, or a small puddle of each color. I start with yellow because it is the lightest color, and my water will get dirty as I go. So if I started with blue or purple, by the time I get to yellow, my water would be discolored and my yellow would not be bright and beautiful. So I'm starting with my lightest colors first, and then I'll work my way to my darker ones. I get the color wet, swirl my brush around in there, and then wipe it off at the edge of my palette. Get my brush wet again, add water to my color, swirl it around, and wipe it off on the edge. It's really important that you have a wash started and ready for each color before you start, and you'll see why once we get going. So today's lesson, your goal is to be able to blend different colors together next to each other, and you want to blend them together seamlessly. So you want to be able to go from one color to the next with a smooth transition. So watercolor dries pretty fast on your paper. So part of the reason you have all of these washes pre-mixed is because you need to work quickly once you start. Once your watercolor dries on your paper, it's permanent. You really can't go back and fix something. We're going to be blending our colors today in rainbow order, only because the colors next to each other in the rainbow really lend themselves well to blending. I'm going to go from red to orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, and back to red. You don't always have to blend colors directly next to each other on the color wheel, but they look really pretty when you do. If you try to blend, say, a purple and a yellow together, because they are complementary colors, they will make kind of a muddy brown color, kind of like what my watercolor looks like right now. Alright, so I've got each one of these mixed. I'm going to clean my brush off. I'm using a watercolor brush, and the way you know the difference between watercolor brushes and non-watercolor brushes, watercolor brushes are usually the brown bristles that are kind of fuzzy. They're really soft and floppy. Other brushes, usually white or yellow, have a little more snap to them, and they work well for detail. The nice thing about watercolor brushes is they're meant to hold water, and you want a lot of it in your brush to be able to mix with the next color. I'm going to get my brush wet, wipe it off just a little. I'm going to start with red, make a small area, wash my brush, and dry it before I go back to my orange. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my orange next to it and then pull it in the middle to overlap. So I'm blending my two colors together, and you can see when I dried my brush off, I end up not having much orange left. So I'm going to add some more orange in there. So my red and my orange overlap quite nicely. I can go back and double check and make sure they're blended. I just need to make sure I have enough water on my brush to do that. My red and orange are blended. I could go back and add a little bit more red, pull some red in there if I wanted to, clean my brush off. Now I'm going to go for yellow. Again, I wash, dry my brush, get my yellow, set it next to my orange, and then go back into my orange. I'm going to twirl those two colors around. You can see the orange still has to be wet. That's why you have to work kind of quickly. I've got almost too much water. I'm going to dry my brush off. I'm going to soak up a little bit of that orange at the end there, dry that off, and get a little more yellow in here. Same thing's happening. It's kind of pooling. So I wipe my brush off, dry it off, and I can use it to kind of soak up a little bit of that color. Alright, I'm going to move into my green. I'm going to give this one a little more space over here because I can see I've got quite a bit of yellow left. Again, I'm taking my color back into what was there before gently to kind of mix the two together. Dry my brush off if I need to. Pull some more of that color in there. I can, if I need to, dry my brush off again and get some more yellow. I just have to work quickly before things dry. All right, wash, dry my brush, and I'm moving on to blue. Another important thing when you're doing this is you want all of your colors to be about the same saturation. What that means is my watercolors are all medium in darkness. They have the same amount of pigment in them. So I wouldn't want my purple to be super dark and super concentrated and have my blue be so watery that I can't see them next to each other. You want them to all be kind of equal in saturation. It helps mix them so you can see them all one by one. I shouldn't have touched that. That was pretty good. But I'm going back to get a little bit more blue. Dry that off and blend that blue into my purple a little bit. And if I wanted to keep going, I could go blue here again, or I could go back to red and just keep this line going and keep practicing. I just have to move before that purple dries out. You can see how used my paper towel is getting. It's always good to have backup. All right, that red might have started to dry a little bit, and I'm actually going to let it dry on purpose here for a second so you can see what I mean about working quickly. It's not totally dry, but it started to dry a little. So when I go back, what's going to happen is there's that line there where the red is showing where I won't be able to blend it because it's already dried a little. I didn't wait that long. You can see how quickly that happens. I can try to go back over my paper and loosen that a little bit, but usually once your watercolor dries and you have that harsh line, there's no fixing it. So another reason, that's why we have all of our colors mixed together so we can move quickly to avoid those lines. We want all of our transitions to be smooth. So I don't want to see where your orange ends and your yellow starts. You want them to kind of blend together. So your goal is to practice blending seamlessly. This might take you 3 sets of rainbows, or it might take you 12 sets of rainbows. Any way is fine. You're doing this at home, so you have however much time it takes you to get this right. When you fill up one side of your paper, once that dries, take a break, let that dry, and you can go and work on the back side of your paper as well. If you want to try skipping colors, you can. You could go from red to yellow and make orange on your own instead of using orange in here. So your goal is to be able to mix colors and blend them smoothly from one to the next. Questions? You can always email me, ask them in Google Classroom, or do your best for now and bring your questions to class next time. All right, thank you.